and relevant to the workplace. So we felt it was an opportunity today just to give you a taster of that. And James Corbett is going to do about a 10 to 15 minute overview of his use of Excel and how it could be potentially used within your companies. And of course, most of us have Microsoft products. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to James. We'll have a few minutes for questions and answers, and then Bill is going to come in with an update from EFIC and the European side, and then the forum will be open to the floor. So James, if you're ready there, I'll invite you in to start your presentation. Thanks, James.
Okay, now I'm unmuted there. So I think I'm sharing a screen, am I?
Perfect.
You can see it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Can everybody else see the screen now?
Yep. Perfect.
Great.
Yep.
A1, Sharon. Okay, so I don't have a huge amount of time, but I give you a quick run through what we do in some of the modules and how we use Excel, and then how maybe it can be applied to the industry. And this is kind of an initiative that's been knocked around for a good while to deliver this type of training out to industry. Because we do get a good bit of feedback from graduates, you know, and I get a lot of requests about how companies use Excel and how to maybe automate a lot of the processes. So it's kind of a good time looking towards September. A lot of what I'm delivering is going to have to be done online. So a lot of this training is going to have to be made available to students who can access it online. So it's kind of a good opportunity to maybe deliver some of this to industry as well, and gauge at the minute where industry is and what the requirements are, and how we can maybe mutually kind of benefit from each other. So to make what I do more relevant to companies and get graduates better prepared for industry, and look at kind of best practice and stuff within companies. And maybe we can have a good kind of mutual relationship there. So Excel, as you're probably all very familiar with it, and it's probably I would think one of the most underutilized packages in the industry. So as I would say to the students, it's very much a blank canvas, right? It's it's an opportunity to create any software solution that you need, but it's useless without the tools. So it's, you know, it's like a woodworker. You need to know what the right tools are, and you need to know what the right combination of tools are. And that's what we try and build into the students. It's a very kind of, you're trying to build up their toolbox, and the tools that you use within Excel are functions. And, you know, there's a lot of problem solving, and by combining functions, you can pretty much do anything. So there's very rarely, I don't think I've ever had an issue, or I've never had this, you know, anything I couldn't achieve in Excel without a bit of research and a bit of thinking and how to use functions, and then maybe dipping your toes a little into VBA. So my own experience of it then is within 3 modules that are delivered in LetterFrac: product development in 3rd year. So we start now students will have a bit of exposure to Excel, and they'll do their product costings and that, but it's very basic. So they really start going into the advanced stuff in 3rd year. And they achieve quite a lot in 1 semester. So you really have 13 weeks of 2-hour lectures. So you've got 26 hours of tutorials essentially to get them to a very high level. Then that leads on to 2 modules in 4th year, which would be project management and lean manufacturing. And in lean manufacturing, we look at MRP and ERP systems and how to create those in Excel. We start looking at databases in SQL and Microsoft Access, something that's very, very valuable. We create kind of, and I'll give you an example of it, but we've created a common material database, and we have all the students pulling all of their data from that. So that would be very applicable to industry as well, so that one person has control over a database. And then all the other people who, let's say, who are estimating, are using that one database and taking the data, which is constantly updated. And I know you can work with your suppliers to get data in that format as well. So the likes of Egger, you know, who have such a huge product mix, they can provide you with kind of the data in a format that will be friendly to embed into a central database that you have somewhere. So probably a few years aware that I'm a graduate from LetterFrac, and I left LetterFrac and went to work for Bose, which was the speaker manufacturer. And Bose was not doing very well at the time. And one of the initiatives was to start manufacturing displays. So there was 150 kind of full-time staff within the factory in Bose. And what we started doing there was manufacturing in-house. Well, mainly it was assembly. There was a lot of subcontracting going out, and a lot of metal. A lot of the components actually came from Ireland. So we had Collins Plastic, who's doing great work at the minute with all the the visors and the safety equipment for retailers for COVID-19. He would have done a lot of the plastic that you see there in those display units. The electronics, a lot of it came from China. The metal was coming from CNS Tooling in Galway and Keltec down in Waterford. And Gola were actually they were CNCing, they were laminating, CNCing, they were actually edge banding for those base cabinets as well. So there was huge quantities of this stuff manufactured in a very short period of time. So about 9 weeks production. And I think that 10,000 of these cabinets were made, and some of the display units were in huge, huge volumes. And Bose had probably the best ERP system available, which was SAP. But SAP is not, we basically couldn't use it because it couldn't deal with the huge product mix. So you bombs with maybe line items of 200 units. You were only doing production for 6 weeks. You might be doing a 6-week production run, manufacturing thousands of these units. And we couldn't get bombs in and start generating purchase orders fast enough. So SAP wasn't the right solution. And then we did what a lot of companies have probably experienced at the minute, which was, we approached software companies to try and build something for us. And in the end, it came down to modifying some of the learning that I had gotten at Letterfrack from Paddy Tobin, who was delivering project management and lean or operations management modules. And by modifying a lot of the spreadsheets and creating new kind of MRP and ERP systems, we managed all that production through Excel, through a single Excel system that was linked and had databases and all the rest of it. So bombs were and materials. And all of the purchasing was done through that. So it was generating kind of automatic purchase orders. We had guys at the back door monitoring what was coming in. So that was going into current inventory. And as we were producing and as we were scrapping material, that was updated daily and was being fed back into the system. So it meant that, I think in 1 year we did about 13 million worth of products all through this Excel system. So a lot of what happened there, I've taken into the modules. And even, in terms of estimating for those products, a lot of the product estimating systems that we create now within the modules are kind of loosely based around my own experience from Bose. So the introduction, as I said, was our product development begins in 3rd year, and they create this kind of product estimating system. They start looking, so a lot of these labs are paired with theory lectures as well. So you start introducing them to product structure diagrams, level bills of materials, modular bills of materials. And then you start kind of getting them to apply that theory into their Excel systems within the lab. So what they'll end up with is something like this. So this was an example of a project that was to design and cost a canteen table. So these canteen tables were actually manufactured and are in our canteen now in Letterfrack. And this is the example of a dynamic dashboard where you could kind of analyze the process. So you could maybe have a drop-down list here. You could change the material. You could see how that impacts the price. You could change from solid to panel. And that then was pulling in different modular bills of materials, which had different labor associated with it or different processes associated with it. So you might be going more CNC, or you might be going more solid or traditional solid manufacturing with one, depending on what you were choosing here. So you could kind of play around with it. And it's a very good product development tool. And it's a good system, I think, to get the students thinking about process as well. And there's a lot of data you can pull from it. So it also would include some capacity and production estimates, so they'd be able to determine how many of these could possibly be made in a day, where their bottleneck is, where the gate is, play around, run some simulations, see if they run it a different way, or if they change the material, or if they go away from CNC, what the production capacity would be. There's fairly detailed process analysis. There's leveled and modular product structure diagrams and bombs. It has a very high level automation, so that it's one of the biggest issues that you have, I suppose, with Excel is it's not very user friendly. So if someone creates something that's very complicated, it's very difficult to pass that over to someone else and have them understand it and know how to use it properly. So there's a big emphasis on the students creating these templates, because essentially that's what they're being pushed to do, is create something that they can go away and use in industry, or something that they could pass over to someone else and teach them how to use it. So the user design, or the interaction with the user, is quite important as well. So it's very structured in what you would expect someone to enter into this, do your bill of materials, do your process, and then have everything else generated automatically. So all of the estimates and all the costs. And again, that's all pulling from a database which has updated material, resource, and labor costs. That takes about 26 hours. So there's 26 hours of tutorials to get to that. The students are beginning with very little to no Excel experience, so you progress them quite fast through this. And this uses functions only, so there's no VBA, there's no magic, there's no macros, it's just Excel functions. So I'll have at the end, I'll kind of list through some of the more common functions that get used. And it's really by having those tools of understanding what the functions are and how the functions work, and being able to combine them, that gives you the ability to create really great automation and create these very lean Excel systems. Then when the students progress on to fourth year, they move on to lean operations, and we start creating an MRP system. So we kind of simulate a kitchen manufacturer here, and again, I've had some collaboration with industry about this over the years, and we've had one or two student projects, fourth-year projects on this area as well. So we have a good bit of information from industry and the requirements of how this would work. But basically what it is if you are a kitchen manufacturer, you want to enter in just sales orders. So if I sell a kitchen, I want to be able to have drop-down lists with dynamic drop-downs that say this kitchen consists of this much countertop, it has this many 600mm cabinets, it has this many 400mm cabinets, it has a sink unit, whatever it is, corner units, wall units, doors, hinges, handles, and all of that. So it's one single input. So you'd have maybe someone in a sales office entering this, and what it spits out then is purchase order requirements. So it does all of the conversions automatically. It converts the cabinet into sheet material, and it can even be exported then into an optimizer. So you can take that data, you can send it out to an optimizer, and you can get a very good estimate on what your waste is going to be. So usually about 9–10% or something like that. And it generates the purchase orders automatically. And depending on the delivery date that you set with the customer, then all the lead times, the lot sizes, batch quantities, all that stuff is built into it, and you just get an automatic purchase order requirement. So something that someone in purchasing go and just buy the sheet material. Not worry, so again, you wouldn't expect someone in purchasing to fully understand how all the conversions work. You want to just give them something that's like, buy me 10 MFC white melamine sheets, and I need them here on this day. And that's what that system is doing for you. So that again is run in first semester. So it's again single user input sales orders. It has multiple outputs, including your PO requirements, again based on lot sizes, lead times. It's exportable to an optimizer, and you can even do the optimization. I have an Excel optimizer which I've been playing around with for years. It doesn't really work fully, so I don't use it that often in the labs, but it's very easy to take the data and export it into a third-party optimizer. And in here then we start introducing the students to databases. So they start creating a single database that I will have control of, which has a lot of the Egger boards and a lot of the hardware materials. So every single student is pulling from the one source. So if I make a change to a price or a cost, or if I need to add a material, then that updates every single student sheet. So that would be something like if you were in, say a drawing department or something like that, and you're doing a lot of estimating, you want everyone to be pulling from the same source of information. That's hugely important, that you have some control over the data, and that you've got kind of databases feeding these other systems. Now it sounds, maybe some of you have experience with that. I know certain companies don't have any experience with it, but it's not actually that difficult. You can create a lot of the databases within Excel and then export them into SQL or Access. and then bring them back again. So you don't really even need to be proficient with Access or databases. You can do it through Excel, and then you can kind of embed it in and have all the links there. It's very, very easy to do. So that whole system takes about 26 hours again, now they have a good grounding because they're fourth year. So you'll be building on what happened in third year and all the functions that they have. And then the final kind of project, or the big one, which is a full year, is project management. So the students will create their own project management system. So basically what we do here is we try and mimic whatever else is out there. So we do everything that Microsoft Project can do, we do it in Excel. You know, even some of the other things like Crow's Nest. So a lot of the features that would be in here, again, it's Excel, so it's not going to be as advanced, but there's a lot you can do now, especially Microsoft is putting a lot of their stuff online, and SharePoint is really gaining a lot of traction. So, you know, you can certainly have Microsoft Forms running from an app and have people logging hours and things like that, and having that feeding into a central kind of estimating system like this. So this is just an example of dashboard. So this is my dashboard that is from our project management system. You do a lot of the theory of project management, so like the earned value management, trying using some statistical analysis to figure out how far you're going wrong. So your earned value management graph there is kind of telling you we have a good bit of slippage within the first couple of weeks of this. We're about 9,000 over where we should be. But that is going to equate, like if that trend continues, we're going to end up about 30 or 40,000 over. So that'll be your profits gone on that project. But you can, with this system, you can kind of flag those things very early. So if you do out your baseline, you know, you do a very good estimate on a project, and then you start entering in the actual hours and the actual costs, you can have some embedded statistical analysis within this system that's kind of telling you, this is how far we're looking to go. We need to do something, or we need to take a breath here and figure out why. So usually, you know, with a project, if you see that there's big variance within your estimates and your actuals very early on, it would kind of indicate that it was underestimated, or there was much more complexity in the project than people might have thought, or there was more to it, or the scope wasn't properly defined, or whatever it is. So within this, then they go through all the phases of the project life cycle: the initiation, planning, you know, controlling, monitoring, and closing. They go through all of those project life cycle phases, and it's all contained within this. So it's really a tool to try and look after the whole project. Again, it uses databases, so they're all pulling from the same resource. You know, we simulate that there's a company with 17 employees. We use activity-based costing, so it's broken down into cost centers. So there'd be a solid manufacturing cost center, panel manufacturing cost center, design cost center, finishing, assembly, fitting, all that. And the overheads are allocated to each of those. So you're using activity-based costing, and those overheads are loaded onto the direct labor. So that's all from a central database. So all the students are using the same thing. They're all simulating that we're working from this one company with 17 direct employees. And the materials as well, again. So we would have expand on the material database a good bit for this, because with projects, of course, it's a new material. So you need to have a very flexible database to be able to enter in new data very quickly. So that's what we look at as well. The embedded earned value management is a feature within it. It has dynamic Gantt charts, dynamic dashboards, material takeoffs, material quantity analysis, and again, automatic purchase order requirements. So you just estimate it out. You do your work breakdown structure, you do your material takeoff, you do your process, very much the same as you would in Microsoft Project or any of those other Gantt chart creating software systems, where you create your kind of dependencies and link tasks and things like that. And then your end dates and all that is automatically calculated. And if you have to shift something or whatever, it's all linked together. So if I end up having to do 100 hours on something where I thought I was doing 50, my end date is going to get pushed out by those 50 hours. So it's all linked together. There's a bit of capacity analysis again within it. The activity-based costing is reported, or is within, and there's some reports and document generation as well. So just to give you, again, I try and veer away from VBA as much as possible, so just to focus on the functions within Excel. So there's examples there of how, so I just pulled a few of these into the slides of how the start date is calculated. So again, a lot of nested if statements. It looks, you know, when I kind of give students a snapshot of these functions at the beginning of the class, it's complete and utter gobbledygook to them. And they really don't understand it. But by the end of the year, they do, and it's kind of, there's this process here. And when you want to do something, so in here, the start date, I want to just use work days. I want to go away and I want to look at non-working days and have them excluded from the schedule. I want to look at the predecessors and see, okay, if which I have to look at 2 predecessors and find the latest date, because the predecessor will determine what the start date is for the next task. And that's how that start date is generated. If I was to try and explain that using the max, the workday, the if, the VLOOKUP and all that, it makes absolutely no sense. But when the students kind of logically write out what it is they want to achieve, it's much easier kind of look at, this kind of plain English statement as, I want to look at here, I want to look for these dates, I want to bring this back in. And then they start thinking about what tools they can apply and how they can combine tools or functions to get that solution. So the same again here, how the Gantt chart is created within Excel.
James, sorry to cut across.
I'm gone too late, am I?
We're just about to close up, I think, just to make sure we have enough room for questions there for you, because I think there's interest there coming through some of the chat, and just to see how there might be some follow-ups. So
yeah, no, I'll so I'll just rush through the rest of them again. So again, the use of linking access or SQL with Excel, that's a very important thing as well, and something that companies can definitely benefit from. And it's kind of the beginning of how you start creating these systems. So some of the training topics, this is kind of an outline. I would look to maybe start delivering some of this at a beginning level in August. So it's content that's going to be created anyway for what I'm delivering in Letter Frac. And I think it'll be a good opportunity for companies, maybe so people who haven't a huge amount of experience in Excel or haven't a huge amount of training in Excel to begin. And so I'll probably begin looking at some of these things, very basic stuff, rows, columns, editing things, formatting, conditional formatting, and then moving on to the more advanced stuff. And there's certainly new additions to Excel. So Excel is constantly updating, and there's some new functions within it that make it a very powerful tool. So I'll let that go to questions now if anyone has any.
Thanks very much for that, James. And I suppose what we're doing is just giving you a sense of some of the opportunities now that a lot of education is moved into the online. We didn't think this was going to be quite readily available as it's becoming available, but as we prepare to bring students into an online world in September in more formal structure, there's obviously going to be opportunities for other learners who want to maybe come in and do some formal learning, maybe a module, and in a way that is a bit more flexible than it would have been before.